This conference will now be recorded.
All right, let's get started. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our practice-based coaching overview. It's nice to see those who have turned on their cameras. We're gonna get started. I am Lauren Williams. I'm one of the early childhood coaches for a majority of Region B and some of Region C and A.
Good morning, everybody. I am Andrea Lowe's. I am the early childhood coach that worked alongside Bridget Davis several years ago to create our practice-based coaching program here at Children First. For a while, I was flying solo as the only coach, and now I'm very grateful to have two great partners that I'm working with in Lauren and Colleen. The majority of my caseload falls within Region A. I also have a couple of classrooms in Region B. And I just want to say welcome, and we're glad that you're here.
And hi, everybody. I'm Colleen Carpenter. I'm the newest addition to the coaching team. Super happy to be a part of this team. It's very exciting work. My caseload is primarily in South County. I do have some classrooms in C and A.
Okay, let's get started. So the first thing we'll talk about is what is coaching in general.
So our slides are a little bit slower. When we click on them, they take a few seconds. There's like a delay. So they will come and you will get to see them.
So coaching is a form of development in which a person called a coach supports a learner or client, sometimes called a coachee, and your coach will probably use that term with you as you begin working with them, in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance.
In 2017, the Office of Head Start added a new standard that included training and professional development in the form of coaching. The requirements for the coaching that they set was that it be very individualized. So it be based on strengths and needs of the classroom and the staff in the classroom. Also be very intensive, meaning that the intensity and the number of times that a classroom is working with their coach is dependent upon a tier level that is set, and that it be sustained, so that it be consistent throughout the year. Also that it be context specific, so that it be something that happens within the context of your own classrooms. It should also be focused, where we have very specific goals set that we can meet, and also included a piece about, if you see down at the bottom there, that assessment results aren't used solely to determine any form of punitive actions for staff, so that it be professional development.
So here at Children First, the research-based coaching program we use is called practice-based coaching. And essentially what it is, it's a professional development strategy used in a cyclical process. So you see that it's a circle. And the outer ring is collaborative coaching partnerships. And pretty much what this is the foundation of how coaching works. We have to build that relationship with you in order to start that cyclical process. And the cyclical process includes three components: shared goals and action planning, focused observations, and reflection and feedback. And this cyclical process promotes effective teaching practices.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about those affecting teaching practices, which is the center of that PBC circle. So essentially, affecting teaching practices encompass a wide range of skills and strategies that you guys use in your classroom. and they should be adapted to the age, to the development, to the individual and cultural characteristics of each child that you serve in your classroom. They are grounded in caring relationships. We all know how important it is to develop those relationships with your children starting on that very first day of school. And so it's effective teaching practices are grounded in those caring relationships. And then you can start working on those teaching practices that are designed to foster development and learning for each child across all of the developmental domains of our curriculum. Teaching practices can include things such as the schedule in your room, the routines that you set up and how they're carried out, how your classroom is managed. So what's your management style in your classroom? It also includes how those children with challenging behaviors, okay, are addressed. Teaching practices and interactions are responsive to and build on the development and learning of each child, okay? So that's where your individualization comes in. You need to look at each child as an individual. And then most importantly, teaching practices can be measured by the classroom assessment scoring system, which most of you know as CLASS. And that is the tool that we use here at Children First, as well as the tool used by the Office of Head Start to measure quality in our classrooms. So when you are working with your coach and you're setting goals, all of the goals that you will set this year during your coaching partnership are going to be based on effective teaching practices. PBC is a form of professional development. That is why Colleen and Lauren and I are part of the Human Resources Department. As coaches, we are not a part of the Education Department. We fall under Human Resources because Human Resources is where training and professional development are found. So we are a part of the professional development that the agency offers through practice-based coaching. So we won't necessarily be coming into your classrooms and targeting specific children. Okay, we have other employees here at Children First that do that work. Our jobs are to work with you guys as our coachees to help you improve, develop, maybe learn for the first time a new effective teaching practice that you'll then be able to carry with you, for years to come. Okay.
So practice-based coaching has 3 components. They will come up on your slides soon.
It's a little delay.
The first component is where is goals and action planning, and that's where we use a needs assessment. We review that with you. We work with you to set some goals. The goals again are very focused and specific, and we create an action plan to guide our coaching. As that progresses, once we have the action plan in place, you'll set a time for us to come in and observe, a time that you feel you would like to be practicing that specific practice. And then we'll come in to observe. Again, the observation that we do is going to be very focused. It will be just specifically on that goal that you've set. We'll gather our information and notes and share those with you. And then we will meet following that observation to do some reflection and offer some feedback. So we'll discuss together how the observation went. We'll share and consider different things that we observed, and then we'll move forward. So we may have other resources that we can offer you to move forward. We may go and make some changes to that goal, but it all goes back to that action plan where the cycle starts all over.
All right, so next I am going to talk to you guys a little bit, or a lot of it actually, about the tiers of support. And so PBC is based on a pyramid model of support. So very much like positive behavior supports, you know, we have that PBS is a social emotional curriculum that we've used here at Children First. That's also based on a pyramid model. But PBC is based on this model, and there are 3 tiers within this pyramid, okay? And so depending on what tier your classroom falls into determines how often you will see your coach, okay? So we'll start at the bottom with tier 1. And tier 1 classrooms are those classrooms that may have a very experienced teacher, a teacher who perhaps worked for Children First for a long time, knows class really well. And so historically, they do very well on their class assessments, and their classroom is a classroom of high quality, right, based on those assessments. So a tier 1 classroom would see their coach once a month. So you would have 1 in-person observation and 1 in-person reflection and feedback session. Then throughout the duration of the month, your coach will keep in touch, you know, maybe via text message or email, whatever you guys determine is the best way to communicate with you, to maintain that communication through the rest of the month if you should have any questions or need anything. Then we move up the pyramid a little bit to our tier 2 classrooms. So those are teachers who have probably been teaching for some time, right? They've got some good teaching skills and practices in place, but there probably are some areas of need that they still need to work on. Perhaps they need to just strengthen some of the skills that they already do. This is a classroom that's probably scored in the mid-range on their class assessments historically. So a tier 2 classroom would see their coach bi-weekly or every other week, which essentially turns out to be 2 times a month. So you would have 2 focused observations done by your coach and 2 reflection and feedback sessions, coaching sessions, with your coach if you are a tier 2. Then we move up to the top of the pyramid, and we have our tier 3 classrooms. And our tier 3 classrooms could possibly be a brand new teacher. Maybe it's a teacher who has some skills, but she has a brand new teacher assistant, right? Maybe there are some teaching practices or skills that they still have yet to learn. And so they would meet with their coach on a weekly basis. So you would set a goal and your coach would observe you every single week, and then you would have a reflection and feedback session with your coach weekly, okay? Any questions about the tiers and how often you will see your coach before I move on? We're gonna talk about next how we determine what tiers our classrooms fall into, okay? And a big part of that is the Designation Renewal system. So those of you who have been working for Children First for a while, or even have experience working at another Head Start agency, you're probably very familiar with what they call the federal review, okay? So as a Head Start program, we get government funding, right? Is a big chunk of where our program's money comes from. And because of that, the Office of Head Start, every 5 years, we go through a grant cycle. So Children First holds the Head Start and Early Head Start grant for Sarasota County. Every county in the state of Florida has a different agency that holds the grant for that county. So for example, in Hillsborough County, the Hillsborough County School Board holds the grant for Hillsborough County. So Children First holds that grant for Sarasota County, and every 5 years we go through a review. And that review will determine whether or not we get to maintain the Head Start grant for Sarasota County, or there is the potential that it could go to someone else. Okay, and that's what designation renewal is all about. Designation renewal in the past, they come out every year, they come out for a different reason, okay, over that 5-year period. And the part that we're going to talk to you guys about today is the class observations portion of the DRS, okay? So in the past, up until about 1.5 years ago, the Office of Head Start would send their observers out. They go into every Head Start classroom only. Okay, so at this time, EHS classrooms are exempt from being a part of the class observations for the federal review. So if you are a Head Start classroom, this is super important information for you guys. Early Head Start, it's still super important because you just kind of need to know. One day, early Head Start might be included. So they would send observers out during that year, okay, whatever year our observation falls into. For us, it's year 2 of our grant, and any other agency throughout the United States of America that was observed also during year 2, they would take the average of all of those programs' scores, and anybody who fell into the bottom 10% in the nation, okay, had to go through designation renewal, or as you may have heard it called, recompetition. That means as an agency, we need to recompete for our grants because there could be another agency, a school board, another entity that would want to compete with us to take that Head Start grant, okay? For us, that happened a couple of years ago. So if you were here a few years ago, you might remember at a in-service event, it was actually our last in-service event before COVID hit. We were over at, I forget the college, and we had our health fair. And Mr. Phillip talked when in his opening statement about our federal review results. And unfortunately, our results for classroom organization domain put us into recompetition. Fortunately for us, a few months later, while COVID was in full swing, the Office of Head Start changed the ruling. They had been working on changing that ruling for some time. It wasn't just flip decision, but we got very lucky that it occurred at a time right after we were going to have to go through DRS. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is what that new ruling states and how it impacts our program. So the Office of Head Start now has developed what they call thresholds, and there are 2 different thresholds. The first one is the quality threshold, and the quality threshold represents the Office of Head Start's expectation for all grantees regarding the quality of our classroom environments, okay? So the Office of Head Start is saying that these are the scores that agencies should be striving for. These are the scores that represent best practice in relation to the class tool. These are the scores that represent high quality in our Head Start classroom, okay? That's essentially what this is saying. And the scores that they determined would be a 6 for the emotional support domain, which is your positive climate, your negative climate, your teacher sensitivity, and your regard for student perspectives. 6 for the classroom organization domain, which is your behavior management, your productivity, and your instructional learning formats, which is your facilitation. This is the domain that put us into recompetition in the first place, okay? Because it only takes 1. Then a 3 for the instructional support domain, which is your concept development, your quality of feedback, and your language model. Now you'll notice that the 3 is on the lower end, okay? And that is because typically the instructional support domain is the lowest scoring domain nationwide. So they came up with these scores by using the data, okay, from all the Head Start agencies federal review scores. So if typically the nation scores between a 2 and a 3, they're not going to put instructional support at a 6 because they know agencies are not there right now. So they actually are being realistic. However, if we receive a score during our federal review below any one of these quality thresholds, it doesn't put us into recompetition, okay? That's the next threshold. If we score below in the quality thresholds, the Office of Head Start is going to step in. They're going to work with us as an agency and connect us to a variety of resources, okay, and trainings that align with the domain that we need support in, okay? And they have not they've not done this before. So this is kind of, a new step for them. If you fall below the quality thresholds, we come in and we help support your program, okay? Any questions about the quality thresholds so far? Okay, so then the Office of Head Start has also developed competitive thresholds. This is where recompetition comes in, okay? So the competitive thresholds can trigger competition, and they represent the Office of Head Start's minimum expectations for all grantees regarding the quality, okay, of our classroom environments. So take a look at the scores for each domain. They have set a 5 as the competitive threshold for emotional support. So if we score as an agency below a 5 in the emotional support domain, when they come out for our federal review, it could trigger competition, okay? They also set a 5 for the classroom organization domain. We fall below, it could trigger recompetition. Then they set a 2.3, okay, for the instructional support domain for the class reviews. The 2.3 will stay through July 31st of 2025. Starting August 1st of 2025, that score is going to bump up to a 2.5 for the instructional support domain, okay? So they will continually be looking at raising the bar, okay? So again, the difference between the quality and the competitive is the quality is what we should be striving for. If we fall below it, the Office of Head Start steps in and supports us. The competitive thresholds, if we fall below them, it can trigger us to go into recompetition, okay? We were there a 1.5 years ago. However, because of this new ruling, we were able to come out of recompetition, okay? So what you're looking at on the screen right now are 2 charts. The first one at the top, that's the shades of blue and white, okay, are our Children First class review scores from 2019. That is the last time that we had class observations for our federal review. That classroom organization score that you see there is the score that put us into recompetition. We fell into the bottom 10% for the classroom organization domain. And it only takes one domain to put us into competition for our grant. So the 3 domains are down the left-hand side. For emotional support, you can see that we scored a 5.8047. Thinking about the competitive thresholds and the quality thresholds that I just spoke about, we meet the competitive thresholds for emotional support with our last scores from 2019. That 5.8 puts us above the competitive threshold of 5. It does not, however, meet the quality threshold of 6, okay? The classroom organization domain, our score was a 5.3125. Because we were above a 5 when they made the new ruling, as an agency, we were able to come out of competition for our grant, okay? Because 5.3 is just above the competitive threshold of a 5. Again, however, we did not meet the quality threshold of a 6. Then for instructional support, we met the competitive threshold, which until 2025 is a 2.3. We got a 2.6721. Okay, so we met the competitive threshold, but again, we did not meet the quality threshold of a 3. So as an agency, we are striving for that 663, okay, those quality thresholds. So we've got some work to do when it comes to class. And that's why Kelly and Lauren and I are here. Okay, so, and that's why we're the ones explaining this to you. So the next chart that you're gonna look at are the last scores that were done in the 2020 federal review. These are not our scores, okay? We were observed in 2019. But in 2020, whatever grantees fell into their second year of their grant cycle, they were observed during the 2020 year, okay? So I just want to show you guys that the mean, that first column that you see, the mean means average, right? So those are the overall average scores from every Head Start grantee agency that was observed during the 2020 year. You'll also see there all the way to the right, the maximum scores. So those are the highest scores achieved by a grantee. And then right next to it are the minimum scores. Those were the lowest scores, okay, earned by a grantee during the 2020 observations. Then they took the averages, and that's what that first column is, okay? So you can see in emotional support, those grantees that were observed in 2020 received a minimum score of a 5.42, but their maximum score was a 6.42. So there are Head Start agencies out there that are scoring above 6, above the quality threshold for emotional support. We're not quite there yet, but we will be, okay? And then the average score was a 6.03 when you took the minimum and the maximum and averaged them together. Classroom organization, the minimum score that an agency received was a 5.06. Met the quality threshold, or I mean the competitive threshold, but not the quality threshold. However, there are grantees out there who received a 6.56 as the high, the maximum for classroom organization. And again, you know, class is based on a scale from 1 to 7. So that's a 6.56 out of a 7. You average those together, and the average score was a 5.78, still above our 2019 score of a 5.3125, okay? So we've got some work to do together, and that's okay. The instructional support domain, okay, you can see nationally, statistically, okay, the minimum score was a 2.11. The maximum score that any grantee achieved was a 3.88. You take the average of those two, and it was a 2.94, okay? So that's where the Office of Head Start determined, okay, we can't have a quality threshold of a 6, right, when the average was a 2.94. So the quality threshold is a 3. They're being realistic. That's what they want agencies to strive for. But the competitive threshold is a 2.3 up until 2025, okay? So we got a 2.6 when we were observed in 2019. So again, slightly below the 2020 statistics. So again, we've got some work to do together, and that's why we're here, okay? Any questions about quality thresholds, competitive threshold, our review scores before we move forward and talk about how we determine our tiers? I know this is a lot of information that you're taking in right now. If you have any questions, after this training, we'll make our contact information available to you guys. You can just reach out and ask us any questions you might think of. Okay, so we're going to continue to plug along. And now we're going back to our pyramid model, okay? And this is for pre-K. If you see down the left-hand side, you've got, this is for pre-K. At the bottom, you're going to see engaging interactions and environments. That is our coaching focus for this year, okay? Last year, our coaching focus for pre-K was the classroom organization domain, okay? This year, we're including a little bit of every one of the pre-K domains with the goal of increasing how engaging our classroom interactions are and our classroom environments are, okay? So all of our Head Start classrooms this year received a class observation internally. Okay, so we did not contract with TeachStone this year. They are the makers of the class tool. Typically, we would have TeachStone observers come out and observe our pre-K classrooms twice a year, once at the beginning and once at the end. And sometimes in the middle, we would utilize our Children First observers to do an observation in the winter to kind of see, where we standed as far as improvement. Last year, because of COVID, we could not bring in any outside people. So we had one observation done internally, okay? So we've taken that data, your class observation scores, okay, as well as utilizing the competitive threshold scores, that 552.3, to determine how our classrooms were going to fall into each tier, okay? So starting again at the bottom with our tier 1, those are our monthly coaching sessions and reflection and feedback sessions. Any pre-K classroom that scored above the quality thresholds, okay? So a 6 or higher for emotional support, a 6 or higher for classroom organization, and a 3 or higher for instructional support on their own class observation fell into a tier 1, okay? Moving up the pyramid to tier 2, any classroom, okay, the teachers within that scored on their class observation this past school year between a 5 and a 5.99 in emotional support, a 5 and a 5.99 in classroom organization, and a 2.3 to a 3 in instructional support will be in a tier 2 for the upcoming school year. Okay, moving up the next step to our tier 3, those are our weekly visits. Any classroom that scored a 4.99 or below in emotional support, 4.99 or below in classroom organization, and a 2.2 or below in instructional support will start at a tier 3 for the upcoming school year. And I say start at, it's because this is where you're going to begin the school year. It doesn't mean that this is where you're going to stay, okay? We are going to have TeachStone come out this year in October. I think they're coming out the 3rd week in October. We already have them scheduled, okay, to our Head Start classrooms only at this time. They will conduct full cycles, full 4-cycle observation of class in our pre-K rooms, Head Start rooms. And once we get those scores back, we get that data, it'll be okay, sorry, I just wanted to mute. So we'll get those scores, we'll review that data with you, and it very well may change your tier if you're a pre-K classroom. It could change it up, it could change it down, okay? Depending on what's going on in the classroom, these scores can change pretty frequently. Maybe you've got some behaviors, you didn't have them last year. So you were tier 2, but now your scores determined that you're gonna move to a tier 3. And that's okay, okay? Because we want to make sure that we are consistently offering the level of support that every classroom needs. We're gonna meet you guys where you're at in that moment. And that level of support can always change, okay? Could go up, it could go down. Any questions about the pre-K tiers? If you are unaware of your tier, I know you guys have only one pre-K classroom over there. So I'm pretty sure that you guys know what tier the pre-K classroom fell into. If you don't, you can email me, Trisha, and I can give you that information, okay? I don't have it in front of me right now. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about Toddler, okay? Because each one of these age levels has their own class tool. So you now see the Toddler pyramid on your screen. You'll notice that the coaching focus, engaging interactions and environments is the same, okay? And we use our own internal scores, okay, to determine the tiers for toddler and infant. Remember, early Head Start is not included in DRS, okay? Early Head Start classrooms are not observed for federal review at this time. So we didn't use the quality or the competitive thresholds for early Head Start. What we used were the highest and lowest scores achieved by our classrooms here at Children First based on the class observations that were done. Some of you had an observation in the spring, some of you had an observation in the summer, depending on what was going on with your classroom due to COVID. So that is how we based these scores. This is how we determined the tiers for toddler and infant. So looking at the tier 1 classrooms, okay, now remember for the toddler tool, there are only 2 domains. You've got our emotional support domain and we've got our facilitation, okay, and instructional domain. So if you received a 6 or higher in the emotional domain, okay, or 4 or higher in the facilitation instructional domain, which we've had classrooms here that have, you will be a tier 1 to start the school year off. Okay, and the updated scores for early Head Start will be coming out, okay? So some early Head Start classrooms do not know their tiers. We're still waiting for some observers to finalize their data in Teachstone as well, but before coaching kicks off officially, you will be informed of your tier, okay? So if you don't know your tier yet, don't stress out. We're going to move up the pyramid to a tier 2. And so we looked at those classrooms that fell between the mid ranges, okay? So any classroom that scored a 4.2 to a 5.99 in that emotional domain, or a 2.6 to a 3.99 in the instructional and facilitation domain, okay, will be a tier 2 to start the school year. Then we move up to our tier 3s, and that is emotional 4.1 or below, okay? Instructional 2.5 or below. These classrooms will start the school year at a tier 3. Okay. Any questions about toddler before we move on to infant? All right, so then our infant class tool only has one domain. So that's why you're only gonna see one range there, okay? So again, we looked at our internal class scores. We did have a few infant classrooms that scored a 6 or higher out of 7, okay? So we use those scores to determine that a 6 or higher, those classrooms will be a tier 1. For the upcoming school year. Any infant classroom that scored between a 3.6 and a 5.99 which is that mid-range for class. It's 3, 4, 5, okay? 3.6 to 5.99 will start the school year off at a tier 2. And any infant classroom that was a 3.5 or below for the responsive caregiving domain will start off the school year at a tier 3. Any questions? Pre-K, infant, toddler, how the tiers were determined. Okay, again, I'm just going to restate that if you do not know your tier, okay, you can reach out to myself, or Trisha can reach out on your behalf. And if your observation was entered and we have your tier finalized, I can absolutely share that information. But like I stated, there are still a few classrooms whose data we're waiting on. So we might not have it just yet. All right, so next up, we're going to talk a little bit about our coaching focus this year, which is those engaging interactions and environments. And Lauren is going to kick us off.
Yes, so when we're talking about using effective teaching practices, we want to look at our framework. And the foundation of that framework is engaging interactions and environments. And essentially, it is the foundation for all learning in early childhood classrooms. Do you guys see the slide? Just give me a thumbs up. Yes? Okay, thanks. All right, let's go to the next one.
Oh God, that's going to take another chance.
All right, so first we'll break it apart and we'll talk about engaging interactions. And interactions are essentially those back and forth exchanges among the teacher and the child, as well as the children and their peers. And when you think of how often interactions can happen, they can happen at any time of the day. And then we also want to look at our engaging environments. Our environments are where the children learn and spend their time throughout the day. So this could be in the classroom. This could also be outside. When we're looking in the classroom, we make an engaging classroom by utilizing the materials that the children are interested in. We incorporate lots of books that they can use. We look at the furnishings in the classroom to see if they are child friendly and they can interact with that. We look at our room arrangement because that determines our classroom management and our behavior management in the classroom. And again, I said we also look outside. For early Head Start classrooms, when you're being observed, the observer can go outside with you. So you want to make sure you are establishing those engaging interactions and having an engaging environment outside as well. And then as well as your staff placement. So are you zone defensing in your classroom to make sure all children are accounted for?
Close proximity.
Close proximity. And then in whole, interactions and environments are engaging when they support the children's involvement in activities that promote positive development and learning. And again, like I said, they are the foundation to development across all areas of the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework, class, and the Florida standards.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So now that you got a little bit of information on our coaching focus for the year, Colleen is going to talk about what happens when you start planning your goals.
All right, so the first step that we use is the needs assessment. Initially, we had planned on meeting in person, and that obviously has changed. When we were looking at meeting in person, we had discussed having the needs assessment available to you today to complete with us. What we will do moving forward is when we come to visit your classroom during the next month, the month of August, we'll bring that needs assessment to you to complete. So the needs assessment itself is where you will see practices, very specific practices listed, and you will kind of do a self-evaluation, a reflection on like how well you feel you're doing this, if you feel you'd like to do it more, how confident you are doing it, if you would like to extend the use of the practice, so maybe you feel like you're doing this practice really well at this time of day, but you would like to move and try to extend it into another time of day. And we'll ask that you kind of prioritize. So as you're going through the needs assessment, that you select your top 3 priorities that you would like to focus on for the year. The scale that you see, for some of you who've seen the needs assessment in the past, the scale used to be on a 1 to 5 scale, and we've adjusted that to a 1 to 7 scale so that it matches more with the class scoring system.
Okay, sorry, I was muting that person.
The other piece that we'll go over with you when we meet initially is the coaching agreement. And that is kind of a commitment for all of the participants in the practice-based coaching cycles. So there's a piece for the coach to acknowledge, there's a piece for the coachee, the staff members to acknowledge, and there's a piece for the supervisors to acknowledge, with different statements of things that we will commit to. Those are things that we'll go over with you.
And then after we've established our roles with the coaching agreement, we'll look at the action plan. And when we're completing the action plan together, we'll pull out your needs assessment that you've already completed. And on your needs assessment, you'll have prioritized 3 teaching practices that you want to work on for the year. And based off of your prioritized teaching practices, you can collectively pick one to start working on. And you'll work with your coach to create your goals. And essentially your goal will look, it'll be clearly defined and measurable, and will look like, what time of day do you want to practice this goal? How often do you want to practice this goal? Is this something that you're just starting to learn, or is this something that you want to extend your practice in? And goals are very small because we want to celebrate the progress through that. So even if your goal, we create a very lofty goal and we start working towards it and start practicing it, and you feel like it's something that you're not achieving, we'll break it down for you and provide you with resources that you need. And we'll break them down into steps that you can start working towards to reach your ultimate goal.
Oh, sorry.
Then after we've completed the action plan together, we'll go into your focused observation. And that's when your coach will come into the classroom, typically for about 30 minutes, depending on what the teaching practice is that you want to work on. And we'll come in and we're only looking exactly at the goal that you have created for yourself, that you want to practice in the classroom. And we'll jot notes based off of what we're observing in the classroom that you're doing, and then we'll write some additional notes of how you can strengthen this practice as well. After the focused observation, the teachers will come out of the classroom to meet with their coach and have a reflection and feedback session, or what we've been calling it is a coaching session. And this is where we talk about your goal that you've created, how you feel you did during your focused observation, what the coach has observed during this time, as well as any new action steps or goals that need to be identified to help better support you in meeting your goal.
Okay. So we do have a timeline for PDC. And this is a guideline of kind of, what's going to happen every month. So what we're sharing with you right now are the next 3 months. Okay, so we've got August, September, and October. So what's going to happen during those 3 months as far as coaching or class, we want to share with you at this time. So during the month of August, I know Kelly had stated before that your coach will be coming out and visiting your classroom, partly because we want to get acquainted with any new staff. We'll be doing some informal observations in your classroom just to kind of get a feel for the environment, for the kiddos, that you have this year. And we will also be leaving with you at some point your coaching folder. And your coaching folder will include your needs assessment. It'll include a coaching survey so that your coach can get some insight into your experiences with coaching, as well as a little survey so we can get to know you guys. Those types of things will be housed in your coaching folder. Those will be dropped off. Your coach will determine how long they're going to give you to complete that paperwork. They'll come back and pick it up and collect it from you. As the coaches, we keep the originals, okay, because we use that for our coaching sessions. A copy of all of the documents that you filled out, or if they're on site, they might just make a copy and drop it back off to your classroom, depending. You do get a copy of every piece of paper that we complete together for PBC, okay? Also, during the month of August, we originally were going to kick off our class in action kind of training and support for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 classrooms. At this time, that's probably going to happen closer to the end of September, okay? And that we've changed that just yesterday, because maybe not so much at Riverview, but at our other sites in our other regions, they still have some instability right now. They're not exactly sure about all of staff placement, and so it's difficult for us to determine all of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 classrooms at this time. So we're gonna just put that off a little bit. In September is when you will have your first initial coaching meeting with your coach. And during that meeting, you will review your needs assessment with your coach. We'll also have your class data from last year. If you are a new teacher, we won't have that class data, but we'll have your needs assessments to use as a guide to start determining what your first goal is going to be. We will complete our coaching agreement at that time as well. And then once you select your goal, we'll also complete your very first action plan. So you will have your first action plan and know exactly what it is that you're going to be working on prior to PBC kicking off, which is on October 4th. That is right after our 45th day. We wait until that time because we know during the first 45 days, we've got ASQs, heights and weights, all these other things that you guys are responsible for. And we want to give you the time to get through that before we start having you focus on coaching. So once it kicks off on October 4th, depending on the schedule that your coach has put in place for when they will visit your classroom for observations and feedback sessions, you'll have your first observation at that time. As I mentioned before, around the 3rd and 4th weeks of October, Teachstone will be coming out for our Head Start classrooms only, okay? And they will be conducting full class observations in each of our Head Start classrooms at that time. Any questions about what's coming up? All right, so then that is all that we have for you today. On the screen now, we have the contact information for all three of us. Should any of you have any questions, you can, reach out to one of us and we'll try and get the answer to that question. So I can be reached at alows@childrenfirst.net. Lauren can be reached at lwilliams@childrenfirst.net. And Colleen can be reached at kcarpenter@childrenfirst.net. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns that you might want to share? If you do, you can just unmute and shout out. No? All right. Then we just want to really thank you for your time. We're super excited about, coaching, kicking off this school year, and, getting to work with all of you through the coaching process. So again, we really appreciate your time and attention this morning, and good luck on your very first days of school on Tuesday. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks,
Bye.
Kelly.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
I'm going to stop recording.